Hey guys, Tekking here. Before I start this video, I just wanted to give a shout out to DanFan29. She's an anime YouTuber. She's pretty cool. Me and her did a collaboration video last week, and go check that out here in the card. I also put a link in the description. It's about the Will of D. We go on about it for about an hour, just like a general discussion sort of deal. We talk about what it could mean, like literally or metaphorically, the different connections it has, the different locations. We talk about the ancient weapons and all that shit. I'm gonna make a Will of D discussion video myself on my channel, but it was really cool to work with her, so go check her out, give her some likes and some subs. I think she deserves it. Okay, so in this video we're going to be talking about Sanji Vinsmoke. He's going to be the next Straw Hat discussion video I did. He's actually going to be the last of the main Straw Hat group that I discuss. It was all randomized, so that's just how that goes. Sanji just ended up drawing the short straw there, but I thought, you know, maybe we should talk about one of Sanji's very prominent abilities, you know, something to kind of like whet your appetites for it, and it's an ability that I've always been fascinated by. It's one of my favorite anime abilities in general, most certainly in One Piece. It's how that Sanji can kind of just like light his fucking leg on fire and then kick his opponents into submission using the fiery powers of hell itself. Yeah, what's up with that, Sanji? How the fuck can you do that? Okay, well, it's something that's actually evolved over time with Sanji's character, from the first time that he's used it in the Enies Lobby arc against Jabra to how he can use Diable Jambe now. But it's something that I should probably just say right off the bat. Sanji straight up has fire powers. Like, that is something that Oda has essentially come out and said. And I say essentially because it's not like Oda's come out and is like, oh yeah, Sanji definitely has the ability to just summon fire whenever he wants. But from the way that he draws his fights, you know, whenever Sanji fights, and his powers that he uses, and the way that, you know, he emits this fiery aura around him and shit, there's really no other way you can look at it. Sanji does have fire powers, but they're not the same kind of fire powers you might think. They're not like the fire powers then, like, you know, I can just like throw fireballs whenever I want, or you're like fucking Yamamoto from Bleach or something. No, it's a very, very different kind of firepower that we're gonna get to. But first, let's just go step by step with this. Okay, the first time that Sanji uses Diable Jambe is Enies Lobby. He's fighting against Jabra. Jabra is one of the strongest members of CP9. He's ranked number 3, right behind Lucci and Kaku. He has the wolf fruit, or the Inu, the dog fruit model wolf. You know, so he's in this form that's really just dedicated to fighting. Remember, carnivorous zone types are always a little bit more brutal than normal zone types. You know, Chopper says this about Lucci, but you know, wolves are carnivores as well, so it adheres to him. He's got sharp claws, he's got the fangs, he's an expert trickster, you know, because, you know, Riddle Red Riding Hood, you get, hey, little girl walks into a cabin with a wolf wearing grandma's clothing. I mean, come on now, I would fall for that, would you not? But he's very adept at also using the 6 powers, and the thing that Jabra was the most gifted at using, you know, each one of the CP9 members have like really adept at using one of the 6 powers specifically, except for Lucci, who is just kind of like well-rounded all around. But Jabra's thing was Tekkai, his iron body, his iron skin. That's the thing that he was really good at. So Sanji was kicking the shit out of him, and it was just doing nothing. You know, you just can't hurt the dude. He's just too fucking strong. So Sanji decided, alright, I can't break through his Tekkai, let's try burning through it. So he proceeds to spin in place like the fucking Tasmanian devil. He just stands up on one leg and just like, whoop, and then just spins in a fucking tornado in place. Jabra just lets him do this. Oh, well, it's anime, you know how it goes. Just lets him do this for a few seconds, and then when Sanji comes out of this this tornado that he created, he's not fucking dizzy in the slightest, but his right leg is just engulfed in flames. It is heated up to the point where it's like visible light, you know, and it's actually so bright that Jabra actually was blinded when Sanji attacked him with it. He was actually blinded, so he didn't see. He was like, what the fuck is happening? Sanji calls this technique Diable Jambe, the demonic leg. He likens it to say that cooking is the gift from God, so spices are the gift from the devil. And I seem to think that, oh, okay, this is symbolic of Sanji's skills as a cook into his fighting style, because of course when you're cooking, heat is always an important aspect of cooking. You know, there's many meals that you can craft with the heat and everything from the range and the stove and all that shit, so it only makes sense that Oda would give him an ability like this. You know, that's a whole other side of his fighting style, is when he heats things up, and when he brings it to a boil, and, you know, he can actually deal fire damage to his opponents. Now, the first time I was, like, okay with how he did this, because he spun in place, and then Sanji said, I think it was Jabra the one that actually, well, was it Jabra or Sanji? I think it was Sanji the one that's, like, the heat I generated from all that spinning around, like, the friction created this fiery leg. The problem is that, just like pretty much every other ability that Oda introduces, this doesn't seem to affect his clothing at all. Like, the heat generated from his Diable Jambe, his shoes, his socks, his pants, they aren't affected by this at all. And Sanji can apparently turn this ability off at will. So, that was some problems I had with it at first. Like, okay, you had to activate this ability by spinning around and generating heat, but you can control it at will. You can control when the heat goes away and everything like that. So he does succeed in beating down Jabra. He Kentucky Fried wolfs this guy's ass. And Flabaw's shot is the thing. He gets fucking stabbed by Jabra in the middle of the air, and then slams Diable Jambe right into his neck, and then knocks him into the ground, and that's how Sanji wins. And throughout the rest of the, you know, before the time skip, this is like Sanji's, like, ultimate attack whenever he goes into it. He uses it against Moria, he uses it against the PX4, there doesn't seem to be a real limit to it, except before the time skip, in order to activate this ability, he needs to spin in order to trigger it. But aside from that, there doesn't seem to be a lot of negative effects with it. I think he did say when he was fighting against the PX4, whenever he was knocking around the PX4 with his Diable Jambe, he said, like, if I keep this up, my leg is gonna break. But I think that meant more about he's kicking the PX, which is a cyborg. It's made of, like, a very tough kind of steel. I think he was talking more about kicking solid steel than he was actually, like, the Diable Jambe is a negative effect on my body. Somebody actually wrote it in an SBS, you know, and this is bringing the question I had, like, Diable Jambe, doesn't that hurt Sanji? Why doesn't Sanji get burned by that? And Oda's response to that is, like, Diable Jambe might burn hot, but the passion of Sanji's heart, you know, that it burns even hotter. And just like things that Oda, this is so typical of Oda, this is what he does. He says something like that, you think he's trolling you, you think he's just like, oh, he's just giving out, not really an answer, you know, he's like, oh, I don't know, he just, the passion of his heart burns hot. But it's just like Oda to take that and actually make it into an actual ability that's for the character, okay? Sanji now has a power where he can just go into Diable Jambe, really, without spinning or without spinning all too much. Sometimes it's seen of him just triggering it, just like Luffy does with Gear Second, or Zoro does with Ashura. It's just like, he can just, like, charge toward the opponent and just, like, Diable Jambe and does, like, 1 or 2 spins and it just fucking turns on. And there's other times, like when he fights against Absalom, where he actually seems to be engulfed in flames. Now, you could say that as just like, oh, Matt, that's supposed to be just, like, symbolic of the fiery passion or his anger, you know, like he goes to rescue Nami from Absalom, and he breaks into the fucking wedding chapel, and his hair's going, like, Super Saiyan, and there's fire behind him. Like, that's just supposed to represent Sanji's anger. You know, like, somebody gets really angry, and you draw fire behind them to represent how pissed they are. But that seems to that's clearly not the case. We see him later on in Fishman Island after the time skip, and he's like this with Watatsumi, and Watatsumi basically is like, he's on fire! Like, they literally can engulf himself in flames. And many of his attacks now are focused on fire, you know? So I'm gonna straight up and say that, yes, the way that Oda interprets this is that Sanji's fiery passion, the passion he has for protecting his Nami Swan or Robin or any woman, to be honest with you, his chivalrous nature, his knightly nature, he can use that, and this just through sheer force of will can summon the fire. Okay? Now, that might seem kind of ridiculous to you, but in anime and manga logic, I think that makes sense. The fiery passion of your soul made manifest in the physical realm in the form of flames. I can dig that. I could totally dig that. That seems fucking cool. Fuck, Brook did it too. Okay, you think I just threw it up there just for old time's sake? No, this was pertinent to the discussion, bitch. Remember back before the time skip, whenever Brook was fighting against the Flying Fish Riders, and he breaks out his violin, and he does that lullaby sound, and all the Flying Fish Riders fall asleep? I remember reading that and thinking, that's kind of fucking weird. Wait, what? What, he sings a song and they fall asleep in mid-battle? How does that make any sense? But I just kind of like, all right, suspension of disbelief, whatever. It's like a quirky thing, whatever. But no, Oda explains this later on. He's like, no, Brook has the Yomi Yomi no Mi. He can actually affect other people's souls using his own soul through music. So that's not a plot hole. That's not like a quirky ability. That is a central part of his devil fruit, is that he can affect people through music. So I think it's the same thing with Sanji. I think it's important to look at Sanji's ability and not think of it as just like, oh yeah, he gets really mad whenever someone attacks Nami and then fire just appears behind him just to show us, the reader, how pissed he is. No, it's like, no, he can literally summon fire. When he gets pissed enough or anything like that, like whenever he was fighting against Watatsumi, I think this is the perfect example of this. He's fighting Watatsumi and he's remembering the torture he went through on the Pink Island, on the Okama Island for 2 years. It's like a permanent, it's like his reserves of hatred. It's like whenever he needs a boost in battle, all he needs to do is just sit there, smoke a cigarette, and just gotta remember. Just gotta remember all that shit I went through, and then he could just summon this endless well of rage just inside of him, and he can ignite himself on fire, and that's how he can launch some of these really big high octane. Like, he ignited all of Watatsumi at once. Hell memories, that's what he called it. He just kicked him, and the fucking Watatsumi's huge. It's like giant. He's like the size of a goddamn mountain, and he just gets ignited all at once. It's not regular fire. This is the fire of passion. That was really high-pitched. I gotta do that again, except more manly. Hold on. That was the fire of passion! There we go. Yes, okay. So yeah, that's the way it goes. That's the case, when he's, whenever he's like this in Thriller Bark against Absalom. It's the same thing with that. And it's also an explanation on how he can use this ability underwater. How he can just ignite himself on fire while being underwater, which is also very similar to Luffy's ability, the Red Hawk, which, if it's true for one character, it could be true for another. Oh, by the way, you can get hockey involved in this, and I'll get to that in a second, because I'll get to that in a second. But if you're gonna say, like, all right, if one character's passion can emanate in a physical form of fire, then it can be similar to other characters. So with Luffy, I always used to say it was a combination of friction and stuff like that, and that might have something to do with it, but I think it's more like he's remembering Ace inside of him, and the fire of, that memory, and that set it up, and so that's how characters can use fire. At least that seems to be the way that Oda is interpreting it, It's more often with Sanji, but with Luffy it's also prevalent. It's like not normal flames. Now, many people might just throw out a hockey in this, and I feel like people use hockey to just kind of explain away any ability that doesn't make sense in One Piece. Like, that's an explanation for everything. Like, if it doesn't make any sense, maybe it's a combination of hockey. Maybe that would have made more sense before we really knew what hockey was. But we understand what hockey is now. We understand hockey is like represented by three different sections: observation, armament. I could throw out like reasons. Maybe hockey can retain heat better or insulate the body. So maybe that's an explanation on like why Sanji's clothes don't catch on fire or something like that. But I don't like to do that. I think those things don't carry too much water. I think it makes more sense to me that Oda just decides to give this character the fiery passion and then just make that actual fire, and then that's how they fight. Sanji can add hockey to his Diable Jambe to increase the destructive power. He can use observation hockey. That's the thing that Sanji's the most adept at using, is observation. But I don't think it's an excuse just to say it's Conqueror's hockey. That's something else a lot of people like to do too. Like, if it's an ability that that we don't make a lot of sense out of, we can just explain it away with Conqueror's hockey. Like, oh, well, maybe the fact that Sanji can light his leg on fire, that might have something to do with Conqueror's hockey, because remember when Luffy and Doffy, clashed with Conqueror's hockey, you see shit like lightning bolts shooting out. So maybe if that Conqueror's hockey can summon lightning bolts, maybe that Conqueror's hockey can can summon fire. I don't think any other member of the Straw Hats is going to awaken Conqueror's Haki. I just want to throw that out there right now. I think Conqueror's Haki is going to be kept as something reserved for Luffy because he really is the Emperor. You know, he's the one that's supposed to be king of the pirates. He's the captain of the crew, and it makes him more unique. It makes his power set a little bit more removed from the other Straw Hats. It makes him special. I don't see any of the other Straw Hats awakening that kind of power that Luffy has. And it's the same thing like we see Doflamingo, head of a pirate crew. He's got it. He wants to be the ruler. You see Hancock, who's the pirate empress. She has it. You know, characters of that nature having it. I think it's going to be kept rather limited on who we see awaken the Conqueror's Haki. They have to be in a very high position in order to achieve it. And I just think that would kind of cheapen it a little bit if other members of the Straw Hat awakened it. So you can agree with that. You can say that that makes sense, or you could say that that's just bullshit. You know, what is this fucking magic power of passion? And so through his knightly, chivalrous nature, he can now control fire. Sanji's a very passionate guy, though. You have to remember that. That's like a big central part of his character. His chivalry and his passion. That's what he is. That's Sanji. And we'll get into more in that when I discuss Sanji in the discussion video, of course. We'll get more into his personality and everything. But I think this is a clever move on Oda's part. I think it was a clever move taking this kind of like throwaway gag and making it something that was actually pertinent to his skill set. It also seems that he has a different variation of martial arts whenever he goes into it. Whenever he uses his standard black leg style, it takes a lot from the Brazilian style of, I'm going to butcher this name, I'm going to try to say it right the first time, Capoeira? Capoeira? I don't know, not Capoeira, but it's the, it's a Brazilian martial art, and it involves mostly using your legs to fight. And that's what Sanji primarily uses when he's using his black leg style. But whenever he goes into his Diable Jambe form, he uses something closer to like Muay Thai kind of fighting. You know, straight, you know, powerful kicks and things like that. So that's just something that's like a difference in terms of styles. And then that got me thinking, like, there's a couple of different styles of martial arts that involve using your legs primarily. So maybe Oda might come up with another fighting style that Sanji might use beyond just black leg, beyond just his Diable Jambe. He might come up with something else that he could use that would involve a whole other kind of like taking inspiration from different kinds of martial arts, you know? Because Sanji really hasn't used just straight up Haki a lot. Like, we've seen him use it a few times, but usually it's Diable Jambe. And I'm assuming that whenever Sanji does go into Diable Jambe, he's using Haki added on that too. But I don't think we've seen a lot of times where Sanji just doesn't use Diable Jambe, he just coats his leg in armament and then just fights that way. It's usually Diable Jambe, which, by the way, I mean, if there's no real drawbacks to it, why wouldn't you fight with, you know, your leg coated in fire? You know, why wouldn't you do that? Other people would say that's just an introductory version of Haki, but I disagree with that. Really, you know, I think it really just has to do with Oda's explanation. That's my opinion on the matter there. But thanks you guys for watching. I think I'm also going to do, because I skipped this whenever I was talking about Zoro's video, I might make a video discussing his Ashura, because those are two abilities that, like, they all came up with at the same time. Like, during Eni's lobby, Zoro got his Ashura and Diable Jambe for Sanji. Also, it harkens back to his master, Zeph, you know, like Red Foot Zeph, and now Sanji, when he goes in Diable Jambe, he's got a red foot. Well, actually, it's closer to, like, you know, white hot, because, you know, the way that fire, you know, the spectrum and everything, the hotter you raise something, its luminescence increases. But it's very much red, so that makes sense there, like, to harken back to his master. But Zoro got an ability very similar, like a boost there of a power that's kind of weird, kind of hard to explain, you know. So I might explain that there. And I think I'm just gonna basically say, and just to give you a little bit of a spoiler for that video, is that Zoro's Ashura, once again, I don't think it has anything to do with Haki. I think it's his, like, demonic aura. You know, like, Oda's going to something beyond just Haki, Devil Fruit. It's like characters have a unique aura about them. You know, Zoro has this demonic thing that seems to cloud around him all the time. And so he has abilities based on that. Sanji, very chivalrous, very heated up, kind of guy has abilities based around that. I think that's what he's going for here. So yeah, that's the video. Thanks you guys for watching, everybody. This will be Tekking101 signing out. Later, everyone.